Phil Robertson had always believed that a man's life should be lived close to the soil. He trusted the feel of mud beneath his boots more than the comfort of polished floors. He trusted the whisper of the Louisiana swamp more than the noise of the world. And he trusted God more than anything else. For almost 80 years, that simple code had shaped every hunt, every prayer, every decision he'd ever made. But the spring of 2025 brought a change that even the toughest swampman couldn't outrun. It began quietly. A misplaced knife in the workshop. A story he started 3 times at dinner. A moment, just a flicker, when he paused and stared into the distance like he was searching for something he couldn't quite hold. The family brushed it off at first. Even legends have slow days, they thought. Even Phil Robertson can forget where he left his boots. But small moments grew into long silences. Long silences turned into confusion. And confusion turned into something the family had never seen in him before: fear. When the doctors said the word Alzheimer's, the room went still. Phil didn't flinch. He simply nodded like a man who had heard every hard truth the world had to offer and survived them all. But Miss Kay felt something inside her break. The boys sat in disbelief, trying to understand how the man who had taught them to stand firm was now facing the one thing that would slowly take pieces of him away. Still, Phil lived those months with a strange calmness. On the porch swing at sunset, he told his children the same words he had repeated for years. Don't cry when I die. Dance. Sing. Celebrate. I'll just be going home. But saying is easier than doing. By March, Phil's memory tugged at him like a current trying to pull him under. He forgot the order of his morning routine, sometimes forgetting he had eaten. One night, he wandered outside at 3 a.m., convinced it was dawn and time to hunt. Jep found him standing behind the barn, shotgun unloaded but ready in his hands, staring into the dark woods as if waiting for something only he could see. Still, there were flashes, bright, miraculous flashes, when he was entirely himself. Moments when he told old football stories with the same humor, the same spark, the same fire. Days when he quoted scripture word for word. Afternoons when he carved duck calls with his grandkids, guiding their hands the same way he once guided his own sons. Those moments became treasures, stored carefully in every family member's heart. By April, the decline sharpened. Jace spoke openly about it in an episode of Unashamed, the family's podcast. His voice cracked as he said the words. He's not good. We're keeping him comfortable. Fans across the world heard the heartbreak in his tone. The Robertson family had always shown strength, but now the world saw something deeper: devotion, unity, and pain that couldn't be hidden. During those final weeks, the house was never empty. Someone was always by Phil's side reading scripture, singing old hymns, holding his hand while he drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes he woke and smiled at the sound of Willie's laugh in the next room. Sometimes he whispered prayers only he and God understood. And sometimes, during moments of clarity, he'd say something so sharp and so perfectly Phil that everyone would stop and stare. One afternoon, Jace walked into the room to find his father sitting upright, clear-eyed, alert. Phil looked at him and said, "You're doing good, son. Keep the faith. Keep the family steady." Jace broke down for the first time. Those moments became rarer as the days faded. On the night before his passing, Miss Kay held his hand as he lay still, breathing softly. She whispered memories of their early years, the fights, the forgiveness, the rebuilding, the faith that saved their marriage. She reminded him of the babies they raised, the business they built, the swamp that shaped them. "I'll see you again," she whispered. Phil squeezed her hand. Just once. Just enough. In the quiet hours of May 25, surrounded by his children, his grandchildren, and the woman who had stood beside him for more than 50 years, Phil Robertson took his final breath. There was no thunder, no dramatic moment, just a peaceful quietness, like the end of a long day in the blinds after the last duck flies away. A stillness that felt holy. Jace was the first to speak publicly. "My dad has gone to be with the Lord today." The world mourned. Messages poured in from across states, countries, continents. But inside the Robertson home, the grief was deeper, heavier, quieter. They had lost not just a public figure. Not just a reality star. Not just a business founder. They had lost their anchor. Within hours, friends and family began filling the house, hugging one another, sharing memories, clinging to the legacy Phil had left in every one of them. But no one spoke about the will. No one asked about money or land or business shares. Those things could wait. Love could not. But Phil had prepared something for them, something none of them were ready for. Something handwritten. Something final. Something that would change the family forever. And they would find it the very next day. The morning after Phil Robertson's quiet funeral felt strangely empty. The swamp, usually alive with birds and frogs at sunrise, seemed muted, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The Robertson family gathered on the back porch of Miss Kay's house, drinking coffee in silence. No one knew what to say. Every memory felt too sharp. Every word felt too heavy. Miss Kay sat with a Bible in her lap, fingers gently tracing the worn pages Phil had held thousands of times. Willie stared out across the pond with red, swollen eyes he refused to hide. Jace, who had carried the weight of speaking publicly about his father's decline, sat with his hands clasped, elbows on his knees, as if holding himself together by sheer force. Jep kept pacing, unable to sit still. And Phyllis, the daughter Phil had embraced later in life, stood nearby, watching the family with a mixture of love and quiet grief. They had all known this moment would come, but no one truly believed it until now. Phil Robertson was gone. After breakfast, their longtime family lawyer, Mr. Collins, arrived in his old green pickup truck. He had been with the Robertsons since the early Duck Commander years, back when the business was still being run out of a small shed and a prayer. He greeted Miss Kay with a hug, his eyes soft and mournful. "I'm sorry for your loss," he whispered. She nodded. "He's with the Lord now. That's the only comfort I've got." They gathered in the living room, the same place where countless family meetings had been held over the decades. But this time was different. There were no loud voices, no playful teasing, no arguments about hunting seasons or business decisions. Just grief. Mr. Collins set a large, weathered envelope on the table. It was sealed with a strip of tape and marked with Phil's unmistakable handwriting. "For my family, open after I'm gone." Just seeing his handwriting made Miss Kay cover her mouth and wipe her eyes. The room fell absolutely silent. "This isn't just the legal will," Collins said softly. "Phil wrote personal letters. For each of you." The air thickened instantly. Phyllis pressed a hand to her chest. Jep leaned back on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Willie swallowed hard. Jace closed his eyes like he was bracing for a punch. Collins continued, "He wrote these before his mind, before things got worse. These are his last clear words to you." Miss Kay whispered, "Read them." But Collins shook his head gently. "He left instructions. Each letter is private. For your eyes only." But the will itself, he wanted the family to hear together. He opened the envelope. Inside were 2 stacks, one, a set of sealed letters, one for each child and one for Miss Kay, and a handwritten document, no longer than a few pages. The handwritten will. Everyone exhaled at the same time. "Let's begin," Collins said, unfolding the document. The will. Phil's handwriting was shaky, but still strong enough to recognize. "To my family. If you're reading this, I've gone home. Don't cry too long. I told you death isn't the end, just the next step." Miss Kay wiped her eyes again, shaking her head at the words she had heard him say so many times. "I leave everything God has blessed me with in the hands of the people He blessed me with." The room remained still. "To my wife, Miss Kay, who saved my soul when I didn't deserve it, the family home is yours completely. I built the walls, but you built the life inside them." Kay let out a soft sob. The boys reached over and touched her arm gently. "To my oldest son, Alan. I leave my books, my notes, and every scripture I ever marked. Teach the word as boldly as I tried to." Alan nodded, jaw clenched, eyes wet. "To Jace and Jep. I leave my shares of Duck Commander divided between you. Not because you're the oldest or youngest, but because you both still live close enough to the swamp to understand what this family business was built on. Don't ever let money change the mission. Jace swallowed hard. Jep rubbed his eyes and sniffed. To Willie. You carried this business into the world in a way I never could have. I leave you the controlling stake of Duck Commander. Protect the faith. Protect the legacy. Don't let the world pull you away from the truth. A tear rolled down Willie's cheek. He didn't bother hiding it. To my daughter Phyllis. I give you the land on the east side of the property. I know I missed your early years. I can't change that. But I hope this land gives you roots in the family you were always meant to know. Phyllis covered her mouth, shaking as quiet tears fell. Then came the final paragraph. You were all given something different because you were all called to something different. But none of this matters if you ever let division creep into this family. Stay united. Stay faithful. Stay humble. This world will try to change you. Don't let it. And when you miss me, go sit by the water and watch the sunrise. I'll be there. When Collins finished reading, the room was silent. Completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Because the will itself wasn't what shattered them. It was the stack of sealed envelopes beside Collins' hand. Each envelope had a name written on it. Each letter contained something only Phil could say. Something deeply personal. Whenever you're ready, Collins told them. One by one, they reached for their envelope. Miss Kay pressed hers to her chest. Willie held his like it was something fragile. Phyllis stared at hers, unable to open it yet. Jace kept his face lowered, shoulders trembling. Jep sat motionless, staring at his name written in his father's unsteady script. Those letters were the final pieces of Phil Robertson, the last words he would ever give them. And as each family member opened theirs privately, the Robertson home was filled with a sound they had all tried to hold back for days. Willie Robertson sat alone in his father's old workshop, the envelope still unopened in his hands. The others had drifted off to different corners of the house and property, each needing space to absorb the words Phil had left them. But Willie stayed behind, rooted to the wooden stool where Phil had carved duck calls for decades. The workshop felt like a museum of his father's life, tools arranged neatly, wood shavings scattered across the workbench, the faint smell of cedar still lingering in the air. It was a place untouched by fame, untouched by cameras, untouched by the outside world. It was where the real Phil lived. And now here Willie sat, with the last words his father ever wrote to him. His hands trembled. He wasn't sure if he was ready. Willie had always been the strong one. The businessman. The negotiator. The face of Duck Commander. But strength felt like a coat that didn't fit him today. Everything inside him felt too heavy. Too raw. He looked down at the envelope again. To Willie. Just 2 words. But they felt like 1,000 pounds. After several deep breaths, he opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper and a small, worn leather strap, something Willie hadn't seen since he was a teenager. His heart tightened. He unfolded the paper. Phil's handwriting, shaky but determined, filled the page. The letter. Willie. You always carried more than I asked you to. You were a boy trying to act like a man long before you should have had to. I saw it. I didn't always say it, but I saw it. Willie blinked hard as tears blurred the words. He wiped them away quickly. You grew up watching me fight my demons. You watched me fail. And you watched me crawl back to the light with your mama's help. You were the one who tried to keep peace even when you were hurting too. He swallowed a tight breath. I gave you more responsibility because you could handle it. Not because it was fair. Willie closed his eyes. How many times had he wondered that? How many nights had he stayed up thinking he didn't have the right answers, didn't make the right decisions, didn't deserve the weight Phil placed on him? The letter continued. I know the world sees me as the strong one. But you were the one who held this family together when I couldn't. Willie's jaw clenched as a quiet sob escaped him. He immediately covered his mouth, embarrassed even alone. You built Duck Commander into something I never dreamed of. But business comes with danger. Success comes with noise. And fame. Fame will try to make you forget who you are. He took a shaky breath. He knew that all too well. I leave you the controlling share of the business because you're the only one strong enough to carry it without letting it carry you. Willie let the words sit inside him. But the business is not what matters most. The business is just a boat. The faith is the river. He whispered the line aloud, in his father's voice. The faith is the river. Phil had said it many times, but seeing it in writing made it feel eternal. Don't let this world change the message we built Duck Commander on. Don't let it twist your voice. Don't let it steal the truth. In the quiet workshop, the message hit like a weight on his chest. Then the letter shifted, becoming softer, more personal. You're a good man, Willie. You're a better man than I was at your age. And you don't need to be perfect to lead this family. You just need to be present. You just need to be steady. You just need to keep your boots on the path God laid out for you. Willie's tears finally fell freely. This leather strap belonged to my daddy. He gave it to me when I was young. I tied it around my wrist the day I gave my life to God. I'm giving it to you now. Willie picked up the strap with trembling fingers. He could feel years of sweat, dirt, and life woven into the leather. It wasn't just an object, it was a symbol of every struggle. And every victory Phil had lived through. Wear it when you feel lost. Wear it when the world gets loud. Wear it when you forget who you are. Willie wrapped the strap around his wrist. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for him. The letter closed with a final message, short, simple, and devastating. You're the leader now. Lead them the way you always wished I had led you. With patience, with faith, and with love. Willie covered his face as the grief poured out of him. Not the sharp pain of loss, but the deep ache of understanding. He finally knew what Phil had seen in him. He finally knew why Phil had chosen him. And he finally understood the mission Phil was placing in his hands. When Willie looked up, he noticed something carved in the workbench, something he had never seen before. 4 simple words, etched deep into the wood. Protect the family first. Willie touched the carving with his fingertips, and he felt his father's presence in the room, not haunting, not heavy, but guiding. Just as he always had. Willie wiped his face, took a deep breath, and stood. He wasn't ready to lead. But he was willing. And that was enough. Outside, he could hear Jace calling his name. The family was gathering again. And for the first time since Phil passed, Willie didn't feel lost. He felt called. And he knew the next step. But the family would soon discover that Phil had left behind more than letters and instructions. He had left a secret. A truth no one saw coming. A final message meant not for one child, but for all of them. The day of Phil Robertson's funeral had a heaviness that even the bright Louisiana sun couldn't lift. The service was beautiful, raw testimonies, soft hymns, and stories that made the crowd laugh through their tears. People traveled from across states just to honor the man who had touched their lives through faith, family, or a duck call hanging in their hunting bag. But as the last guest left and the family returned to the homestead, something shifted. The grief that had united them in the churchyard began dissolving into an uncomfortable silence. Because now, for the first time since Phil's passing, they were alone. And the questions, the tension, and the pressure they'd been suppressing started rising to the surface. The gathering in the living room. Miss Kay sat in her favorite rocking chair, clutching a framed photo of Phil from their early years. Behind her on the wall hung mounted ducks, old fishing poles, and decades of memories. She looked tired, older than she had 36 hours ago. Jace paced near the fireplace, jaw tight, mind spinning. Willie leaned against the kitchen counter, his face red and swollen from crying. Jep and the girls sat quietly on the couches, avoiding eye contact. On the coffee table sat the object that had been haunting the entire room. Phil's final letter. The letter he had written in the weeks before his mind began to fade. The letter he told Miss K to keep sealed until after his death. The letter no one had dared to open yet. The silence stretched until Willie exhaled sharply. "All right," he said, voice low. "We need to talk about it." Missy looked up. "Talk about what exactly?" Willie's eyes moved to the envelope. "That." Jace's pacing stopped. "We said we'd wait. Dad's been gone less than a day, Will." "I know," Willie snapped. "But Dad wrote that for a reason. We can't pretend everything's fine. There's stuff we need to deal with. Big stuff." Jep swallowed hard. "Like Duck Commander?" The name landed like stone in the room. Willie ran his hands through his hair. "Yes, Jep. The business. The land. The rights. Dad's shares. Everything." Jace stepped toward him, shoulders squared. "This ain't the time." "It's exactly the time," Willie shot back. "Before rumors start. Before lawyers get involved. Before the whole country starts speculating." "You're worried about the internet?" Jace asked, incredulous. "Our father just died." Willie's voice cracked. "You think I don't know that?" "I can barely breathe, Jace. But this family's got responsibilities. Dad left something behind for us to handle." Miss K finally spoke, voice trembling. "He wanted you boys to stay together. Please don't fight today." But it was already too late. The Willie versus Jace moment. For years, Willie had been the business-minded brother, the CEO, the planner, the one who kept the brand alive long after the TV cameras stopped rolling. Jace had been the steady one, the spiritual compass, the quiet leader, the man who carried the family's faith into every decision. Normally, they balanced each other. Grief had erased that balance. "You want to open the letter just to see if Dad left you the company, don't you?" Jace said quietly. Willie stared at him, hurt, offended, raw. "That's not fair, and you know it." "Then why are you rushing this?" "Because I want to honor Dad's wishes." "We don't even know what his wishes are yet." Willie's voice rose. "But I don't know what he worried about. He told me 100 times. He didn't want this family falling apart when he was gone." Jace shot back, then slow down and let the family grieve. Willie clenched his jaw. "Grieving doesn't mean ignoring reality." Their voices grew louder. The temperature in the room climbed. The younger siblings watched helplessly as the two oldest sons, usually the backbone of the Robertson name, stood chest to chest. Jep breaks the tension. Suddenly, Jep slammed his hand against the table. "Stop." Everyone froze. Jep never raised his voice. He looked from brother to brother, eyes filled with tears. "We lost Dad yesterday. And now we're losing each other. Do you really think he'd want to see this?" Willie stepped back, breathing hard. Jace stared at the floor, fists unclenching. Jep paced toward the envelope. "You want to know what Dad wanted? Let's open it. Right now. Together. As a family. Before this gets worse." The room went still. Even Miss K held her breath. And then something unexpected happened. Miss K makes a decision. She stood slowly, walked to the coffee table, and picked up the envelope with shaking hands. "No," she said softly. "This letter, this last piece of your daddy. I'm not letting it be opened in anger." She held it close to her chest. "You'll read this tomorrow morning. After you've prayed. After you've slept. After you've remembered that your brother's first, businessmen second." Willie closed his eyes and nodded. Jace wiped his face, ashamed of the fight. The tension broke, not fully, but enough. Miss K continued, voice steady but broken. "Tonight, we're going to eat together. We're going to sit around this table the way your daddy always wanted. And tomorrow, we'll read his words." She placed the letter on the mantel, under Phil's large portrait. The silent dinner. That night, the family gathered around the long wooden table. Bowls of food sat untouched for a long time. Everyone was thinking the same thing. What did Phil write in that letter? What final message had he left them? What truth was waiting to change everything? No one knew. But they could all feel it in their bones. Whatever was inside that envelope was big. Big enough to shake their world. Big enough to make or break the family. Big enough that Phil had trusted only the written word to deliver it. As they held hands for a prayer, Miss K whispered, "Lord, keep this family together. We need you now more than ever." But even as she prayed, morning came slowly, creeping into the Robertson home like a quiet visitor, soft, respectful, almost hesitant. No one had slept well. Every creak of the wooden floors, every rustle of the curtains, every distant bird call felt heavier than usual. Because today, they would open the letter. The final words of the man who led them, taught them, held them together. The last message from Phil Robertson. The family gathers. By 8 a.m., the entire family gathered in the living room, sons, daughters, grandchildren, even cousins who had driven through the night. Miss K sat in the center, holding the sealed envelope in her lap like it was made of glass. The house was silent. No TV. No podcast mics. No hunting stories. No laughter. The only sound was the ticking of the old wall clock, one Phil had repaired so many times that each tick felt like it carried a piece of him. Miss K wiped her eyes. "Before we read this, I want y'all to promise something." Everyone looked at her. "Whatever he wrote, whatever he said, we will not let it divide this family." Willie nodded first. Then Jace. Then everyone else. Only then did Miss K break the seal. Phil's final letter, the reading. She unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting was unmistakable, messy, sharp, stubborn, unmistakably Phil. Her voice trembled as she began reading aloud. "To my family. If you're reading this, I've already gone on home." A wave of emotion swept through the room. "Don't cry for me. If you could see what I'm seeing right now, you'd celebrate. But since y'all are stuck down there for a while, listen up." A faint laugh broke through a few tears. It sounded like him, direct, wise, funny, and blunt. "This family is my greatest earthly treasure. Not the business. Not the fame. Not the duck calls or the land. You." Willie stared at his hands. Jace blinked hard. Jep sniffed quietly. "You boys argue. A lot. I've seen it, I've heard it, and sometimes I pretended I didn't. But now it's time for a truth you may not like." Miss K paused, breath catching. Everyone leaned forward. "The company is not what I'm leaving you. Because the company is not what made us a family. Faith did. Love did. Forgiveness did." Willie's jaw clenched in surprise. He'd expected instructions. Maybe succession plans. But not this. Miss K continued. "So I want to make something clear. Duck Commander belongs to all of you. Equally. No fights, no rankings, no CEO this or founder that. You all get one share. Because you all share the name." Gasps filled the room. Willie covered his face. Jace wiped tears. The girls stared in disbelief. Phil had done the one thing none of them expected, he removed every possibility of competition. But the letter wasn't finished. Kay steadied her voice. "But this letter ain't about money or business. It's about something much bigger." She looked at her children, with eyes full of both love and warning. "There's a division growing in this family. Maybe you see it, maybe you don't." Everyone stiffened. Phil had seen everything. "Some of you think you lead spiritually. Some think you lead with business. Some think you lead with creativity. Let me solve that for you." Miss K's voice lowered. "None of you lead this family." The room froze. God does. Silence. Total, complete silence. Your job isn't to fight for control. Your job is to protect each other. Support each other. Love each other. And when you disagree, which you will remember this simple rule I try to live by. Grace first. Jace bowed his head, shoulders shaking. Willie wiped his eyes, ashamed of the argument the day before. Jep mouthed the word wow. Kay took a deep breath. Her voice grew softer, trembling. Now for something only your mama knows. Everyone straightened. The land behind the old barn, the swamp trail I always kept to, myself, belongs to none of you. Confusion rippled through the room. I'm giving it to my grandkids. All of them. Together. A few kids looked up in surprise. Phil's words continued. Because I've watched the younger generation get pulled apart by the world. Screens. Fame. Pressure. Y'all need a place to come back to. A place that reminds you who you are. A place where the mud is real, the water is cold, and the ducks fly wild. It made perfect, beautiful sense. That land will be yours to protect. Yours to grow up on. Yours to keep the Robertson way alive long after your parents are gone. Kids began crying. Parents too. Kay's voice cracked. Last thing. Take care of your mama. She walked with me through the darkest parts of my life. She forgave me when I didn't deserve it. She held this family together when I tried to pull it apart. Kay covered her mouth, eyes overflowing. Don't you leave her alone. Not for one day. Not for 1 hour. She could barely finish the last line. And boys, take her to Dairy Queen sometimes. She likes that. A soft, warm, painful laugh spread through the room. Phil. Always Phil. Kay whispered the final words. Until we meet again. Your dad. The room dissolved into sobs, unfiltered, raw, cleansing. For the first time since his death, the family didn't feel lost. They felt instructed. Reconnected. Challenged. Called to something higher. Phil's letter had done what Phil always did. It pointed them back to God. Back to family. Back to each other. Willie stood and walked to Jace. No hesitation. I'm sorry, he whispered. Jace pulled him into a hug. I'm sorry too. Jep joined them, arms around both brothers. Then Missy. Then the girls. Then the grandkids. A giant, tangled, tear-filled family hug filled the living room. Just the way Phil would have wanted. Miss Kay placed the letter in a frame.